So let's do it in alphabetical order, shall we? And do you know which one you're starting with? I'm just making sure, checking your SEC East trivia.
Well, if I'm going first, then I'd have to start with Florida. But I think, Roman, are you going to go first? Why don't you go first?
I think I will go first.
All right,
here
what
with
do we
Florida.
got? 50-50 shot.
I love it. You travel at Utah early in the season. You have a neutral site game versus Georgia, which we all know about that one. But one of the more interesting facts is that at South Carolina, they split the last 12 meetings, which most people would not understand that Florida has struggled and has split 50-50 at South Carolina. That's going to be really big for them to continue on that trajectory. Who's going to be that next team in the East?
That is wild. 50-50 versus South Carolina. Not something that you would think about. So, when I look at Georgia and their schedule, the first four, man, wow, they're all at home. Not super compelling, that's for sure. South Carolina.
Not unlike this year's schedule to a certain extent.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously
true.
they had the big Oregon game, but other than that.
Yeah, and that wasn't at home, right? Neutral site. That was in Atlanta, so it was close by, I guess. And, of course, Florida, the perennial trip down to Jacksonville. The Ole Miss one's interesting only because they got off on Georgia in 2016, 45-14 on the road. That was a beatdown in year one for Kirby. And, of course, it's the Kirby-Kiffin Bowl. That would be a lot of fun to revisit. That'll be the first time those two guys match up in Athens.
Roman, for Kentucky, it's interesting because they have a scheduling kind of strategy, and it doesn't involve playing in one of these big games, like, non-conference games. What do you like? Do you like that approach from Stoops' crew?
Anytime you can get wins early in the year, it always helps the confidence and just building. It gives you time time to develop who you want to be each team each year. Every year is not the same, so that's one really good thing. One interesting fact that this would be the first time that they won back-to-back meetings versus Florida since 1976 and 77. And before that, they had lost 16 straight home games versus Florida.
It's becoming a fun little 1-2 punch there between those two. Moving on to Mizzou.
Yeah, so Mizzou's got kind of an interesting scheduling quirk right now because you see the to be announced on September 23rd. So depending on who that opponent ends up being, they can kick off the season with 4 straight home games. That's always of interest. Kansas State, obviously, they picked them up this year. They play them again next year. They get them at home. Kind of a proximate game and an out-of-conference rival.
Just don't schedule App State. That's all we're asking.
Just
stop.
Giant killers. You cannot mess
That's
with
a
the
lot
Giant.
of black and yellow, too, when you think.
It is. All right, how about South Carolina, Roman?
Well, you start right there in week 1 at North Carolina. I know we talked about it earlier. We're getting a repeat of the Mayo bath for the winning of the coach.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll see what happens. No promises for anybody. Getting Clemson at home late in the year is a really big deal. And also that they are winless in all 8 games all time versus the Texas A&M at Texas A&M and Kyle Field.
Crazy.
Very
That game
interesting.
coming up October 28th as we look at the Tennessee Volunteers, of course, opening up that matchup against the Cavaliers.
Yeah, they're in Nashville, so that'll be kind of fun to start the season off. Tony Elliott will be in year 2 by then for the Virginia Cavaliers. And what's interesting, they play Texas A&M. This will be the 3rd time that they've faced the Aggies already since they've joined the conference. Just interesting scheduling quirks, right? They've seen them 3 times. Georgia hasn't been to Kyle Field once, so it's always of interest how these teams pop up on the schedules respectively. You look at the back end of the season, late in the year, facing Georgia in their penultimate game, and they've lost 5 straight to the Bulldogs since they beat them in 2016. It's an interesting time for that game to pop up.
All right, for Vanderbilt, staying in the state of Tennessee.
Well, you kick it off, you got Hawaii. Too bad it's not the same road trip as you had this past year. They actually come to
They want to go in away and away series? I'm all for that.
Hey, look, I was at Alabama. We did 2 years at Hawaii. It was great. So you miss out on that, but still, Vandy, they get Alabama A&M. They get 2 first leading off the season with 2 home games. Then you got to go at Wake Forest.
The one I like, though, is so they went to Hawaii this year, right? And then next year they go to Vegas. I mean, if you're going to schedule non-con games,
might have some
pick
fun
a
doing
great
it.
spot, and they definitely did.
That is a great pick, too, but, I mean, only for 21 and up, guys.
Yeah, that's true. And Vandy, they're so smart. I wonder if they're counting cards. Just play the game straight.
But let's talk about that, though, just kind of the different philosophies, right? We've seen Georgia open up in some of these big-time games. We see Kentucky deciding, listen, the first 3 games are going to be non-conference opponents, which they should be able to outclass them. What do you make of the teams that need to take that next step to get it up to Georgia's level?
Well, what's interesting, actually, Georgia, when you look at their schedules, it's kind of a weaker non-con schedule, right? Typically, they do go out of their way, schedule somebody pretty difficult, especially to open the season. Seems to be that philosophy. That won't be the case next year. some of these others, like a Kentucky, that's almost a holdover from a Kentucky of past when you think about it, because they would have to schedule bowl eligibility. They don't have to do that anymore. That's a pretty established program. They could probably start picking more fights in their non-conference schedule.
In the future for that, Roman, does Kentucky need one of those kind of like marquee non-conference wins to kind of put them to that next level?
I think so. At some point, you have to get that early win that really puts everybody on awareness, right? That lets everybody know, no, this Kentucky team is for real, nationally recognized, not just in the SEC where we see Kentucky. We've seen how they've grown this program, what Coach Stoops has been able to do and build there and have the success that they've had, sustained success as well. So it'd be really interesting once they start getting some of these bigger games early in the season. That's what everybody really starts to grade you on. Those first week 1, week 2 wins versus other non-conference, other Power 5 schools. Those are the wins that you like to, that bank you and help you later on in the year.
And build upon it. I also saw Tennessee only leave the state of Tennessee once in the first 7 weeks. So that works out pretty well for the Vols.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.